surface in the time of final judgment. First, by heat.
Men were scorched with fierce heat, and they blasphemed the name of God, who has the power over these plagues, and they did not repent.
And later, by flood.
And every island fled away, and the mountains were not found.
Some people suggest that that could refer to the mountains covered with water and the rising of the oceans.
Unlike some of John of Patmos's predictions, this one is backed up by as many as 99% of scientists. They agree that the heating of the Earth's surface and the unstoppable destructive rise in sea levels is already happening. Many climatologists now predict that by the year 2065, sea levels could rise as much as 10 feet.
The main contribution to global sea level rise is global warming. It's the expansion of the seawater as the oceans warm, and it's the melting of ice, melting of glaciers, the melting of continental ice sheets, and all that water flowing into the oceans and contributing to even more sea level rise.
The reductions of the glacier are accelerating rapidly each and every year. And this is as good of a signpost of what we're dealing with when it comes to climate change as just about anything.
In September of 2015, President Obama stood in front of Exit Glacier in Kenai Fjords National Park in Alaska to drive home a point. The 2-mile-long mountain of solid ice is melting. It's lost more than 800 feet since 2008.
It's possible that we will lose most of the West Antarctic ice sheet and perhaps a chunk of the Greenland ice sheet. Enough ice to give us maybe in the range of 20 feet of global sea level rise. You're talking about flooding of the major coastal cities. 25% of the population lives within that range. You are talking about tens of millions of people across the world who will be directly impacted.
Welcome to Sea Level Rise in the year 2015, folks.
Philip Stoddard isn't just the mayor of South Miami. He's also a scientist. And when he's seen how the sea levels around Miami have risen to dangerous levels, he knows the world is changing.
Normally those rocks there constitute the edge of the water, but today, as you see, the water's coming over the top. It's the first time I've seen that. The water should be about 2.5 feet below those rocks. Or at least it used to be.
On this day, Miami is experiencing a king tide, the highest tide of the year. But the rising global sea levels have taken this typical event and made it potentially catastrophic. According to Stoddard, it's only going to get worse.
I think in 2100, Miami will be reduced to a series of islands. It'll be about 10% of its landmass still above water. So it'll be very much like the Florida Keys is now.
And what about the Florida Keys?
They'll be underwater.
The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development lists Miami as the #1 most vulnerable city in the world when it comes to the rising of the ocean. The city is trying to ward off the inevitable. Karen Bolter evaluates the risks of low-lying property in the Miami area.
We're here in Miami Beach and Cardi Avenue. They are raising the road 3 to 4 feet. The water was getting higher than the road. Now that they've raised it and added pumps and stormwater infrastructure to get the water out, the streets are going to stay dry.
Karen says the city will spend around $500 million in the next 5 years for pumps to keep the rising seawater off the streets. It may not be enough.
But it's really a Band-Aid fix. There's too much water for the pumps. Our maps show that if nothing is done, by 2100, Miami is going to be shrinking to a much smaller landmass.
As the global waters continue to rise, by the year 2500, San Francisco's AT&T Park will be a swimming pool. In the Boston area, if the sea rises 25 feet, Harvard University could be underwater.
For about 200 years, the top of the Lincoln Memorial will be underwater.
It's that kind of apocalyptic destruction that doesn't have to be imagined. It's already happened in some of our major cities. The rising waters put our coastlines in danger. But a single violent storm can take those already high waters and drown a city with storm surges.
In Staten Island, rescuers in boats today went house to house in this still submerged neighborhood.
By 2012, New York City had already seen a foot of rise in the waters along the coast. But Superstorm Sandy's deadly storm surge conspired with rising sea levels to cause devastating flooding across New Jersey, New York City, and Long Island, uprooting buildings, flooding subway systems, and bringing infrastructure to a grinding halt.
All you need is an extreme event, right, to wipe out essentially a coastal city. We saw New Orleans was nearly destroyed by one extreme event, Hurricane Katrina, and with the ongoing global sea level rise, it may no longer be viable to even have a New Orleans.
It's a devastating scenario being played out more and more around the world.
Sea level rise will generate tens of millions of refugees, or hundreds of millions of refugees.
If we literally saw hundreds of feet of sea level rise, we would have to massively relocate a growing global population competing for less food, less water, and less land, simply because there is less land.
Earth's transformation into an actual water world would certainly be a disaster of biblical proportions. But some warn the end of times may come about before the ocean waters drown us. Our own inventions could turn on us, leading to the fulfillment of a prophecy from the book of Revelation. Don't